It begins dominant. God, I mean, every one of them is just eating this thing. This is pretty awesome. That water's come up. Usually it's dirt shallow right here. And this is really cool too. I can see bumps in their stomach where like they've got stuff in there, like probably big bluegill. That one, I mean, every one I catch keeps on looking better and better. I got into fishing at a really early age. My dad had a lake house at Lake Livingston in a place called Cape Farrell Marina. And I started going up there pretty much when I was a little kid, and we'd go, he white bass fished and catfished, and we had a pontoon boat, you know, and things like that. But I really just grew up catfishing on the bank and doing that stuff. It wasn't until the 7th grade, I was crappie fishing in the stalls. It was pouring down rain, and the guy came in and put his boat in the marina stalls, and I went up to him, and he had all these worms, auger tail worms. I'll never forget it. They were all laid out on the front deck of his boat, and I was asking him, like, he's like, oh yeah, I left them biting. He's like, they're right over there. You can go throw them out of the bank. And I was like a black bass? Because I mean, those were unheard. Like, I'd never caught a black bass before. He's like, yeah. So he showed me how to Texas rig a worm up. I got my rod, went over there pouring down rain. I was this little skinny little, you know, kid in the 7th grade, and caught 2 bass off the bank right where he told me to. And it was over after that. I didn't care. I still white bass fish and catfish and crappie fish, but it was like bass fishing was the only thing on my mind after that. I mean, that's why. Like, that is why right there. It's becoming one of my, I mean, just to come out here and catch freaking fish like this. I ended up walking the bank the next morning, catching a 5-pounder and going, okay, this is the best thing in the world. Then I had to go back to school. But pretty much every weekend in middle school and high school when I wasn't playing sports, I was back up at the Cape walking the bank. All the way through high school, I ended up eventually moving up there just so I could fish every day. And so my junior year, I went up there and like I said, fished off the bank and did all that stuff. Met some guys while I was walking the bank named Mark Malone. He's like, you want to fish this tournament? I said, yeah. So I ended up getting in a tournament. I caught big bass and we came in second. So that was my first ever fishing tournament. And from there, I'd fished tournaments for a couple years with him. And then one of my buddies from high school, me and him started fishing tournaments. And so me and him fished for years together. Me and my dad eventually also got a pretty old boat, but we got a boat that we could fish some tournaments on Livingston. So I was fishing with my dad some and my best friend some, and mainly on Livingston, Conroe, and Lake Houston. And I started kind of branching out a little bit after that. And I picked a college, SFA, just because it was close to Rayburn, even though I'd never really fished Rayburn. Got up there, was going to school, still going back home to fish a lot with my dad, my buddies. Anytime I would just fish a tournament, I was going back home on the weekends to fish down there. That progressed until a little bit on. I stopped fishing there as much and started kind of branching out on Rayburn. Rayburn was like the mecca of tournament fishing. I mean, I went from Livingston and Conroe and all these other lakes to Rayburn, and Rayburn was like, it was all the big names you've ever heard of were fishing it. And so I started trying to make a name for myself on Rayburn. Did okay. I had a lot older boat at the time. I finally got into, we'd won a couple boats before then, but we had to sell them so I could make money. And I had like a 10-year-old boat, broke down most of the time. And that's pretty much what I did for a couple years. I'd say I was going to school, working at Papa John's, and fishing a whole bunch. And I did it every single minute I could that I had spare time and could save up 50, 60 bucks for the day just so I could go fishing. That's what I did. And went to Rayburn trying to figure it out. And for those years, I eventually quit Papa John's, quit school in the sense of I was going every other semester. I'm 12 hours short. I eventually just went full-time into fishing, and it was pretty scary. Did it for about 8 or 10 years, where 90% of my income was straight from tournament winnings. And I was fishing everything around Texas, even went regionally quite a bit, and did that, and really didn't know. I had qualified for the elites, qualified for the tour, turned both of them down because I just had an older boat, older truck. I didn't think I had the means, and I was too worried about trying to get into it. And I didn't want to be that guy. I was already putting up rent money, you know, to fish tournaments. I thought that was a little bit more dangerous trying to do that while fishing the elites. Like, there's a big difference between $1,000, $500 here and there, and $5,000, you know? So, you know, looking back, there was always parts of me that wish I had done it. I'm kind of glad, though, that it's worked out a weird way, because I don't think I'd be where I'm at today through that process of being around locally and regionally. I met some really cool guys within the industry. One being Phil Marks from Strike King. I had been with another company or two here and there, and they weren't small companies, but they just weren't the right fit. And me and Phil Marks became friends, and I knew I wanted somewhere in the industry to fall. I just didn't know what it was. You know, I was really passionate about baits. I kind of had this weird story that when I was younger, growing up in Cold Spring, and I met a guy named Ken Seifert, who was a giant sales rep for Lure Jensen. So when I was real young and doing all that off the bank, he used to give me a bunch of these baits, and they were a bunch of baits. He's like, hey, go try these out for me. So I was doing it at a young age. I didn't realize I was actually preparing for a job I'd have later on in life. I just thought I was getting all these cool free baits to go try out. So I'm on the boat one day with Phil, and I always had this design process in my head of like this bait I wanted. And it was basically a frog style bait that looked like a brim, like a perch. And I'd had it for years, had already drawn it out. And we're on the boat, and it was just by having chance, he was talking about the fact that they were working on this bait. And he said, yeah, it was kind of like a frog bait that looked like a brim. And I'm not gonna lie, my stomach just turned, because I was like, every year at ICAST, I'd ask my buddy, hey, do you see a bait like this? And they were like, no. And I was like, great, it's finally gonna come out, and I'm not gonna have anything to do with it. Luckily, when Phil was explaining it to me, and I kind of was being real quiet, and he was like, yeah, we're having kind of problems with it not working right. And so I jumped in, and I was like, well, you made it wrong. It needs to be like this. And I took a shot by saying that, because it's probably not something you want to say to one of the head guys of Strike King, but I did it. And he looked at me, and if anyone knows Phil, he looked at me with a very stern look. And he said, how do you know? You know, he's like, how do you know, Buck? You've never even seen it. And I told him how I thought they probably envisioned on making it. And he was like, yeah. And I said, hey, you need to make it like this. And man, I can tell you, I still get chills to this day, because he was like, all right, cool, it's yours. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. I'm like, what do you mean it's mine? Well, that was him offering me a job. So after all those years of fishing, we're talking 10, 15, 20 years of fishing, I was offered a job to make a bait for Strike King. And that has turned into making baits, to then being hired on, and to now being part of, pretty much head of product innovation for Strike King. So I don't know if that all transpired if I had actually started fishing the elites and gone that route. Now I'm within the industry, getting to design and make baits. I mean, I got tons of baits in here that I've even got to mess with today. And so it's been a really cool experience. Like, Strike King has been like nothing but phenomenal. You know, through that process though of fishing regionally and things like that, one of my fishing partners, Russell, he was a sales rep for a lot of companies, one being Sunline. So I got introduced to Sunline, met Valster, started working with Sunline, been with them. It was the only line company I've ever been with them forever. They've taken care of me like crazy. It's been a great opportunity to like fish with them and work with them. And that's kind of how some of these things went, you know, just staying around the industry. You know, like I said, there wasn't a plan for us back in the day. And what I mean by that, it was like, if you wanted to be a professional, you had to go fish the elites. And I didn't go that route. I thought you kind of had to. And instead I've gone this other route, which is I get to fish every tournament I want to. I get to make my own schedule. I get to make baits. I get to do YouTube stuff. I get to do shoots like this. I get to do a lot of different things. And done tons and tons of TV shows. Did one with Kevin Van Dam this year. I've done some with Zona, Clark Winlet, I mean, you name it. And so all those have come from just catching a fish. And so, yeah, like when I was younger, if you'd have told me all of that, I wouldn't have believed that I was able to do all this stuff. Like I said, I thought it was all, you had to be this so-called professional. And it's not the case. And so I've really, really enjoyed where I'm at and what I've got to do. I don't think many people have got to do this. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now and where I'm at in the industry. And hopefully I get to stay like this for a while and fish 25, 30 tournaments a year, make a whole bunch of new baits for Strike King, test out stuff for Sunline. I mean, like kind of a dream job that I didn't even know was a job when I was younger.